Aside from the Royal Rumble matches, the Money in the Bank ladder matches are typically my favorite matches of the entire calendar year. It's an awesome, chaotic ladder match where the winner gets a world championship opportunity anytime, any place, and it's a match full of main eventers, people who are about to become main eventers, or just really awesome in-ring performers. What's not to like? It's just a really fun match with a really fun concept, which is why for this video, I'm wearing the Fun Guy shirt. However, as much as I do love the Money in the Bank concept as a whole, the WWE hasn't always gotten it right. Yes, in many cases, they've picked the correct winner that's gone on to become a megastar, but there have been matches where they've picked the completely incorrect winner. So in today's video, we're gonna go through every single men's and women's Money in the Bank ladder matches, and I'm gonna tell you who I think should have been the winner that year. And I'm only going to pick people that were in the actual match itself. That way we don't get into too many crazy what-if scenarios. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring that bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I am confident that you're gonna fall in love with this YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. All right, let's jump into it. 2005 was an incredibly important year for the WWE. More specifically, if you want to whittle it down to a night, WrestleMania 21 was an incredibly important night in WWE history because it cemented guys like John Cena, Batista, Randy Orton, and Edge at the top of the kingdom in the WWE. Not only that, but it was the night that the Money in the Bank concept was born. And in that night, the winner was Edge. And I'm gonna keep this nice and simple. Do not change this. He was the correct winner. He was a blossoming superstar. He was a detestable heel at the time. And he went on to make one of the biggest impacts in WWE history with how he cashed in the briefcase and set up the blueprint as to what the Money in the Bank winner ultimately would become, and created his moniker of the Ultimate Opportunist and set him up to be the biggest piece of shit heel that the company had seen in quite some time. Do not change this. This is already perfect. 2006, we're still at WrestleMania because the Money in the Bank pay-per-view doesn't exist yet. We're at WrestleMania 22 in a year that had a very bizarre Money in the Bank lineup. Look at this. So we have a Bobby Lashley who is incredibly young, who has only been in the WWE for a couple of months. We have Shelton Benjamin, who was an amazing MVP of the first match, Matt Hardy, Rob Van Dam, and then for some weird reason, Finlay, who would be in a couple more matches after this, but also Ric Flair, who at this point is pushing 60. So this is a very, very weird lineup. Ultimately, the WWE ended up going with Rob Van Dam, and I do think this was the right call. Rob Van Dam was on the cusp of becoming an uber giant babyface, and the WWE did the correct thing by pulling the trigger on Rob Van Dam and having him cash in on John Cena to help, of course, not only catapult Rob Van Dam to the top of the card as one of the top babyfaces in the WWE, but revive ECW as a whole. Now, all of that does kind of get flushed down the toilet with RVD's getting caught with drugs and ECW getting completely bastardized from what it once was. But that's, we can't control that with the power of hindsight. What we can do is say that in the moment, at the time, Rob Van Dam was the correct choice. 2007, we are still at WrestleMania, and this is WrestleMania 23. And WrestleMania 23 had an absolutely star-studded lineup for their Money in the Bank ladder match. It had Mr. Kennedy, Finlay, Matt Hardy, CM Punk, Randy Orton. We had Jeff Hardy, Edge, and Booker T. Ultimately, the WWE ended up going with Mr. Kennedy, and I do think that to a degree you can say that this is the right choice, especially the right choice in that moment in time. However, I do have to use a little bit of hindsight here to recognize that this wasn't the right choice, because Mr. Kennedy would go on to get injured and he would go on to drop the briefcase altogether to Edge. The unfortunate thing is that Mr. Kennedy would never recover from this, which ultimately tells me that the WWE never really saw really big potential for Mr. Kennedy in the first place, even if they were ready to push him to the moon. I feel like they were always ready with an eject button on the Mr. Kennedy push. So here's the thing. I don't think that it should have been Mr. Kennedy, because I don't see that the WWE had this long vision for him, even if they were going to push him. I don't think it should have been Edge, since he'd already won it. I think it should have been Jeff Hardy. We are in 2000 2007, we are just in the cusp of the uber Jeff Hardy popularity, where Jeff Hardy becomes the most popular man not named Barack Obama on the planet. I think that you could have really kickstarted this popularity with a Money in the Bank victory. When I look at the lineup and when I look at where people would go on to be within the next 12 months, I feel like Jeff Hardy is actually the right call here. 2008, still at WrestleMania, this time WrestleMania 24, and we have this lineup. We have Shelton Benjamin, Carlito, CM Punk, Chris Jericho, John Morrison, MVP, and once again, Mr. Kennedy. So this one might turn a few eyebrows because I don't think that CM Punk was the right choice. He does go on to win back-to-back Money in the Bank ladder matches, so we are going to be talking about CM Punk here once again. However, I don't think that the WWE was really willing to put their eggs in the basket of CM Punk yet. Yes, they gave him the Money in the Bank briefcase. Yes, he cashed in on Edge, but then he would go on to have a very lackluster reign where he just wasn't treated like a top guy. Frankly, if they weren't ready to do it with CM Punk yet, yeah, I do feel like they did it right the next year. I feel like they should have given it to Shelton Benjamin. Shelton Benjamin was cooking at this time. The gold standard. He would pretty much go on to become the face of the, frankly, failing ECW at the time. But at this point, Shelton Benjamin was the MVP of Money in the Bank. Shelton Benjamin, in my eyes, aside from Edge, was the face of Money in the Bank. I feel like this would have been the correct year to experiment, and they experimented with Punk, but I feel like they should have experimented with Shelton Benjamin instead. 2009, this is WrestleMania 25. This is the one that had, once again, CM Punk, Kane, Mark Henry. The gold standard, once again, was in here. Shelton Benjamin, once again, stealing the show. MVP, Kofi Kingston, Christian, and Finlay were all in this match. And the WWE ended up going with CM Punk for the second time in a row, and this is where they made the right choice. This is when you could tell creative was actually ready for CM Punk and actually had good stuff written for him, because he would go on to have that legendary feud with Jeff Hardy for the World Heavyweight Championship that to this day is still one of my favorite feuds and arguably one of my favorite championship reigns of the Ruthless Aggression / PG era. That was kind of like the fringe of it. This is perfect already. Do not touch this. 2010. This is a rough year, okay? So this is a year where Money in the Bank is still at WrestleMania for now. We're not done with 2010. This is WrestleMania 26 with the ladder match of Christian, Shelton Benjamin, Jack Swagger. We have Kane in there, Kofi Kingston, Evan Bourne. We have Matt Hardy, Dolph Ziggler, MVP, and Drew McIntyre. There are a lot of great options here. You could have pulled the trigger once again on Shelton Benjamin, on Christian. Kofi Kingston had a lot of popularity at this time. Dolph Ziggler was really blossoming here, and if you really wanted to make him the chosen one, you could have gone with Drew McIntyre. Somehow, out of all of the guys on this list, I think they picked the worst one. Jack Swagger should not have won this Money in the Bank briefcase. I do not think that he had the right aura, the right presence to really be a Money in the Bank winner. It just didn't make sense for him. He fell flat as a winner. He fell flat when he cashed in. He fell flat as a champion. Overall, it just wasn't the right time for Jack Swagger. Frankly, I don't know if ever was the right time for Jack Swagger. It was, however, the right time for It's Christian. Christian, who just came over from TNA and demonstrated to the world that he could absolutely be a main event player anywhere that he went. He left the WWE, where he had admittedly a Hall of Fame tag team career, tried as a single star, and the WWE just wouldn't really get behind him. Goes to TNA, becomes at that moment in time the most important, vital member of the TNA roster, becomes a world champion there, becomes the face of TNA, comes back to the WWE, gets relegated to ECW, when what should have happened is he should have won the Money in the Bank briefcase, and this should have been WWE's one real attempt at a singles Christian run, and they would fumble him again in 2020, 2021, and let him go to AEW. So to me, this is kind of the start of everyone else can seem to use Christian correctly except the WWE.
This is it. I remember seeing
this. Oh my God, no way.
The production of this is genuinely fantastic. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, dude, this match is great. That, folks, was a preview of this week's Wrestling is Cool Match Club, which is available exclusively over on patreon.com youtube.com/Santi's app. This week, we're looking at the very first ever Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania 21. We're looking at an indie classic between Walter and Will Ospreay. We'll also be looking at the debut of The Fiend Bray Wyatt against Finn Balor at SummerSlam 2019, and the criminally underrated Fatal 4-Way match at SummerSlam for the Universal title between Brock Lesnar, Braun Strowman, Roman Reigns, and Samoa Joe. You're going to be getting these watch-alongs and more, like the Raw review, SmackDown reviews, the Wrestling is Cool podcast 3 days early, all over on patreon.com/Santi's app. We unfortunately cannot show these on YouTube. It is impossible. The only place to get the watch-alongs is on Patreon. So come check it out. It'll be the top link in the description or the link that's in the pinned comment. I think that you're going to like it, even if you just try it out for 1 month. All right, back to the video. I have no proof of anything of this, but something tells me that the Jack Swagger cash-in and him winning was so lackluster that they're like, shit, we can't go the rest of the year without a Mr. or Money in the Bank. Let's run it again. So this is where the Money in the Bank pay-per-view is born, and we are still in 2010. So 2010 had a total of 3 Money in the Bank ladder matches, but now they are split across brands. We have a SmackDown Money in the Bank ladder match, which has a lot of the people from the WrestleMania 26 ladder match. We have Kane, Christian, Kofi Kingston, Big Show, Drew McIntyre, Dolph Ziggler, Cody Rhodes is in this, as well as Matt Hardy. And they ended up going with Kane, which I don't necessarily think is a terrible choice, because they did a pretty cool thing that they hadn't done up until that point, which is to immediately have the winner cash in on the very same night. However, it just seemed, I don't know, a little bit weird to me, considering what I felt like was part of the reason we're doing this was to replenish and reintroduce the briefcase back into the ecosystem after it had been kind of bastardized by giving it to Jack Swagger, and to give it to Kane and have it instantly be used up to replace an injured Rey Mysterio was a little bit odd. But again, I don't hate this choice. I think this is fine. But again, you had Christian right there in the same match. You screwed him over twice in the same year. Should have been Christian. Raw also had a Money in the Bank ladder match, and this is one that you do not touch. This is a really important moment in WWE history where The Miz went on to win the Money in the Bank briefcase, and he was what a lot of people felt was an undeserving person to be in the spot of the card that he was in. He was looked as an undeserving singles United States champion. He was definitely seen as an undeserving Money in the Bank winner. He would be seen as an undeserving WWE champion and an undeserving WrestleMania main event. But this is the power of the briefcase. It catapulted a guy that so many people saw as undeserving to the top of the mountain, even if it was temporarily. But The Miz was far and away the best choice for this. 2011, from here on out, every single Money in the Bank ladder match takes place at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view /PLE. Okay, let's continue. For the first 2011 one, we have the SmackDown one with Kane, Sin Cara, Daniel Bryan, Wide Barrett, the undashing Cody Rhodes. We have 2 members of the core in Justin Gabriel and Heath Slater, as well as Sheamus. The WWE ended up going with Daniel Bryan out of everyone on this list, and I think that this is the right choice. I don't think that you need to overthink this one. Like, look again at this field. None of this really jumps out. I feel like the only other one aside from Daniel Bryan that you could make a good case for here is either Wade Barrett or undashing Cody Rhodes, but I think they made the right call with Daniel Bryan, especially seeing the popularity that he would gain from becoming Mr. Money in the Bank and then the World Heavyweight Champion. It really was the first little roll off the top of the mountain that would become a giant snowball into the Yes Movement and Occupy Raw and everything that you started to fall in love with Daniel Bryan over. The Raw side of things had Kofi Kingston, Rey Mysterio, Evan Bourne, Alberto Del Rio, R-Truth, Jack Swagger, Alex Riley, and The Miz. This is kind of a nightmare situation because a lot of these guys had lost a lot of momentum and couldn't really be seen as credible Money in the Bank winners. Kofi Kingston had lost a lot of the steam that he had from 2009. The Miz and Alex Riley were off the back of just getting clowned left, right, and center by John Cena, and they missed the opportunity to pull the trigger on Alex Riley. It was too late at this point. Jack Swagger, nobody wanted to see. Nobody at this point took Evan Bourne seriously as a potential world champion. To me, it was between Rey Mysterio, Alberto Del Rio, and R-Truth, but R-Truth had just gotten a crack at John Cena to become world champion and lost there. But I think R-Truth could have been a good choice. They ultimately ended up going with Alberto Del Rio, which I ultimately don't hate because of how they used them. At the very least, it was to eventually down the line crown CM Punk. I feel like this was kind of a nightmare situation to begin with. I don't think that there are many great options here. So I guess I'll keep it as is, even though I don't love Alberto Del Rio as a winner here. 2012, the SmackDown match had Tyson Kidd, Sin Cara, once again Christian's never going to win these, Damien Sandow, Santino Marella, Cody Rhodes, Dolph Ziggler, and Lord Tensai. This is another one of those easy ones. We had Dolph Ziggler win here and go on to be one of the most recognizable, best Mr. Money in the Banks ever, with one of the best cash-ins of all time. Do not touch this. This doesn't need to change. The Raw one was fucking weird, okay? This is a just terrible situation to be in. We have John Cena, Kane, Chris Jericho, The Big Show, and eventually The Miz also does get added to this match. Look, Kane, not a realistic option here, especially at this point in his career, and he's already won it before. Everybody would have probably canceled everything to do with WWE if The Big Show had won. Chris Jericho at this point had lost a lot of momentum, having lost to CM Punk for like 3 straight pay-per-views, and The Miz we'd had already seen as a Money in the Bank not that long ago. So kind of the option by default was John Cena, which is what the WWE ended up going with. I hate this. This is honestly, there was no good option here. We're going with Cena as the correct option, which is what they went with, because at the very least it set up, you know, the CM Punk heel turn, the stuff with The Rock. Look, I'm just trying to find a silver lining here. None of these options were particularly great this year. 2013 gave us Fandango, Cody Rhodes, Dean Ambrose, Jack Swagger, Wade Barrett, Cesaro, as well as Damien Sandow, and the WWE ended up going with Damien Sandow. I actually think that this is a good choice. The problem is that every single person in this match was just ill-timed because John Cena was in the midst of winning the WWE Championship from The Rock. Like, no one was going to dethrone John Cena when he was at like peak uber super Cena after defeating The Rock. It just wasn't going to happen. It was just bad timing. Whoever won this was going to lose to John Cena. It was inevitable. And that's what happened to Damien Sandow. That being said, if you go back and rewatch that match, Cody Rhodes was hella fucking over, dude. A lot of people wanted them to pull the trigger on Cody Rhodes, to the point where as I was rewatching the match, it made me think that maybe they should have gone with Cody Rhodes here and maybe just had him hold long enough so he could avoid the John Cena thing. But again, with the power of hindsight, we know that things ultimately worked out for the best with Cody Rhodes and what we have today. But dude, go back and watch that match. Cody was over. The Raw match had CM Punk, Sheamus, Randy Orton, Kane, Daniel Bryan, Christian once again, and Rob Van Dam. The WWE ended up going with Randy Orton, and I think that this is a fine option. Randy Orton has won everything in the WWE. I think at some point or another, you had to give him this accolade so he could really round out his resume. And I think they used it perfectly with how he ended up cashing in against Daniel Bryan, joining the Authority. They did everything right with this cash-in, so I'm going to leave it as is. 2014 gave us the Money in the Bank ladder match that had Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, Wade Barrett, Kofi Kingston, Rob Van Dam, Jack Swagger, and Dolph Ziggler. The WWE ended up going with Seth Rollins, and Seth Rollins would go on to be one of the most memorable Mr. Money in the Banks ever, cashing in at WrestleMania, doing the heist of the century. This is a perfect choice. You don't need to touch this. This is a really important moment in WWE history. If you want to change this, you're just wrong. You're just wrong, okay? 2015 was a nightmare situation for the WWE to be in, because this is what the lineup looked like. It was Roman Reigns, Corporate Kane, Dolph Ziggler, Kofi Kingston, Randy Orton, Stupid Hair Sheamus, as well as Neville. And the WWE ended up going with Sheamus, which is like the most blah, like the most suck the air out of the room victory that you could possibly come up with, because no one wanted this. Nobody cared about Sheamus. At this point, he lost so much of the momentum and allure that he had back in 2012, and people just were not buying this in any way, shape, or form. Frankly, I'm going to change this up. I think that they should have gone with Dolph Ziggler again, because Dolph Ziggler's initial cash-in was so magical, so good, but unfortunately, because of injuries, like no one's fault. It was bad. It wasn't bad booking. It wasn't because Dolph Ziggler was a bad champion. It was just injuries. His championship championship reign was forced to end just far too quickly. And it's a shame because that cash-in is so goddamn legendary. I feel like they should have given it to Dolph Ziggler again and let him redeem himself as a champion again. 2016 gave us the match with Dean Ambrose, Sami Zayn, Chris Jericho, Cesaro, Alberto Del Rio, and Kevin Owens. This is one of those matches that you don't need to change. Let's just keep it simple here. Dean Ambrose won. Dean Ambrose would cash in on the same day against Seth Rollins. It was great. Don't change this. Leave it as is. 2017 is an important year in Money in the Bank history because this is where we introduced the women's Money in the Bank ladder match. And the initial iteration of it had Carmella, Tamina, Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, and Natalya. And the WWE ended up going with Carmella, who was Money. And that kind of became her moniker. Mella was indeed Money. The way that the match ended was questionable with having the Chinless Wonder climb up, grab the briefcase for Carmella. They ended up redoing it and Carmella ended up winning again, which is what they should have just done in the first place. They should have just had Carmella actually grab the briefcase. But Carmella was a great Miss Money in the Bank. Carmella was also one of those characters that would have never reached the main event scene unless it was because of a plot device mechanism like the Money in the Bank briefcase. This is exactly how you should be using the Money in the Bank briefcase if you aren't going to put it on an already ready to go main eventer. This made Carmella. Do not change this. This is already great. The men's one is so frustrating. Look at this lineup, okay? You have AJ Styles, you have Baron Corbin, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Dolph Ziggler, and Shinsuke Nakamura. That is 6 guys. You have 6 guys in there, and out of those 6, 5 are all great options. You know which one the WWE went with? The one that wasn't a great option in Baron Corbin. Baron Corbin wasn't ready for this. He just wasn't. I understand that the moniker of SmackDown was the land of opportunity. Jinder Mahal was the champion. Giving this briefcase to Baron Corbin would help, again, cement that SmackDown is the land of opportunity, but he just frankly was not ready for this. And clearly the WWE believed that as well, because within 3 weeks he would fail to cash in on Jinder Mahal. And that's it. The briefcase was out of existence for that year. It should have just been Kevin Owens, man. Kevin Owens was hot at this time. He was a great character. People were fully behind Kevin Owens, and he was also a great piece of shit heel. This should have been Kevin Owens. In the 2018 men's Money in the Bank ladder match, they had Braun Strowman, Finn Balor, Rusev, The Miz, Kevin Owens, Samoa Joe, Kofi Kingston, as well as Bobby Roode. Now, the WWE ended up going with Braun Strowman, but this was entirely unnecessary. Like, the Strowman Express had already left the station. Strowman was going to get world championship opportunities. He didn't need this as an excuse to get him there. He could just get there in a legitimate way and people would be entirely okay with it. So to me, even though I like, it's not the worst thing to give it to him, I still feel like you could have used this briefcase in a better way to elevate somebody else that needed elevating. Braun Strowman didn't need it at this point. And Braun Strowman would just say, hey, I'm cashing in at this point in time. Here you go. There was no surprise element to it. It was kind of a letdown with how he used the Money in the Bank briefcase. I think this should have been Finn Balor. I feel like this was the right opportunity to redeem Finn Balor and give him another chance to sink or swim as a potential world champion. And I think the Money in the Bank briefcase would have been a great stepping stone to eventually get there again, because Finn Balor never really got his chance to be Universal Champion. He held it for one day and had to drop it because of injury. Now that he was back, I feel like this was a great way to get him back to that echelon. At this point, the women's Money in the Bank hasn't missed at all, and their matches have been really good so far. This one was Charlotte, Alexa Bliss, Natalya, Lana, Ember Moon, Becky Lynch, Naomi, and Sasha Banks. For this, the WWE ended up going with Alexa Bliss, and again, I'm keeping it simple here. I think that she was a great Miss Money in the Bank. My only gripe is that for consecutive years and multiple times, the WWE for the women will do same-day cash-ins, and it started here, and I wish that they hadn't done that, considering the previous Miss Money in the Bank winner was somebody that held it for darn near a year. So look, it just started a trend that I didn't love, but Alexa Bliss as a Miss Money in the Bank, holding it for a while would have been better, but I still think she was the right choice, and I'm ultimately okay with her cashing in on the same night. The 2019 edition of the women's Money in the Bank ladder match gave us Bayley, Nikki Cross, Dana Brooke, Mandy Rose, Ember Moon, Natalya, Naomi, and Mella. This was another same night cash in. They picked the right winner. People wanted Bayley. I just wish Bayley had held it longer. Again, that is my gripe with this, but it is the right winner, and that's what we're doing here. We're picking whether or not they had the right winner, and I think that Bayley was was the right choice. The men's edition to this day to me is like one of the most frustrating ladder matches that I've ever seen. It has Ricochet, Braun Strowman, Drew McIntyre, Baron Corbin, Randy Orton, Andrade, Mustafa Ali, and Finn Balor. So when I look at this field, there are a lot of great options here, and the WWE ultimately ended up going with a guy that wasn't in the match and didn't participate for 99% of the match, appeared last second to just climb up and grab the briefcase in Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar, as Party Brock going around with the briefcase being a boombox, was undoubtedly funny. Yes, it was, but he didn't need this. This is Brock Lesnar. He doesn't need an excuse to get a world championship opportunity. Brock Lesnar just gets championship opportunities. So to take this plot device that could have given any of these guys a world championship opportunity is honestly borderline stealing. It's criminal. Brock didn't need this. Again, I'm going to say Finn Balor could have benefited from this. If you didn't pull the trigger on him previously, this is your another opportunity to let him redeem himself. I think a lot of people here might have gone with Drew McIntyre, but I'm using a little bit of hindsight here. If you give Drew McIntyre the briefcase here, we don't get the great Royal Rumble moment that he had most likely. So I'm going to stay away from Drew McIntyre here and give it to Finn Balor. 2020 is the funkiest year in this event's history because you have the Climbing Titan Towers ladder match to win the Money in the Bank briefcase, where they had to go up the elevator, they'll go up the stairs to get to the top of the building, and then climb a ladder to grab the briefcase. And in this match, a couple people got tossed off the side of the building, which is like murder as far as I'm concerned. But this was the field. We had Otis, Aleister Black, Daniel Bryan, Rey Mysterio, AJ Styles, and King Corbin. The WWE, I don't know if it was for the lulz, for some reason went with Otis. It was a comedy decision. They went with look at the fat guy that was eating and catering, that was obsessed with pie during the match. He is the one that ultimately won. Yuck, yuck. Isn't that funny? It was stupid. And the WWE knew that this was a bad decision because they ended up taking the briefcase off of him anyway down the line, and The Miz would become the Mr. Money in the Bank. This should have just been, he's in the picture, by the way. AJ Styles grabbed it and dropped it. It should have just been AJ Styles. AJ Styles at this point is one of the best heels on the roster, and he's got the momentum from the Boneyard match, the fantastic match with The Undertaker. Then this would have pretty much rounded out his Hall of Fame worthy career right there. This is like one of the few accolades that he doesn't have. He should have won this. The women's match was also a fairly chaotic affair. You have Asuka, Lacey Evans, Carmella, Dana Brooke, Shayna Baszler, as well as Nia Jax. The WWE ultimately ended up going with Asuka, which I do think is the right call considering what happened, which is that Becky Lynch was pregnant and really they were vying not just for an opportunity, but to be the next women's champion, because Becky Lynch would vacate the championship to whoever won the briefcase. I think a lot of people here might have thought that Shayna Baszler was the right choice, but Shayna Baszler had lost a lot of that steam and a lot of that momentum at that year's WrestleMania. So I think if you, at this point, we're looking for a viable champion that you could rely on. When I look at this field, I feel like your best option was Asuka. If it was for a traditional Money in the Bank cash-in, I might have gone somebody else, but as it was for what they were actually going for, Asuka was actually the right choice. 2021 is a funky year. In the women's match, we have Evil Alexa Bliss, Nikki ASH, Liv Morgan, Natalia, Tamina, Naomi, Asuka, and Zelina Vega. WWE ended up going with Nikki ASH, which was definitely a decision. It was odd. It came seemingly out of nowhere, and she did successfully cash in on Charlotte, only to immediately lose the championship to Charlotte. So she was the definition of a transitional champion. The unfortunate thing is that this didn't help cement her as a main event player. She was as transitional a champion as it was. Not only was she a transitional champion because of this, she was a transitional main eventer. She was in the main event scene for 3 weeks and then right back down to the card, right down to the 24/7 championship picture. You go. So unfortunately, I'm going to say that she is not the right choice here. I'm going to go in a bit of a different direction. This is a tough field to choose from. I don't think it's Nikki ASH. I think you should have gone with Zelina Vega here. Zelina Vega had just returned to the WWE. She got released in 2020. She came back in the start of July, and 2 weeks later, we had the Miss Money in the Bank ladder match. If you wanted to really cement her as a big return to the WWE, you should have had her win win here. And the WWE did go on to give her one of those important accolades and Queen of the Ring, and she became Queen Zelina, but she should have been Miss Money in the Bank Zelina, in my opinion here. The men's Money in the Bank ladder match was studded this year. We had Kevin Owens, McIntyre, Riddle, Ricochet, John Morrison, Big E, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Seth frickin' Rollins. This is the year that Big E won. Yes, Big E would unfortunately suffer this injury that would end his WWE career, but him winning the Money in the Bank briefcase was a genuinely just an amazing moment. The pop was thunderous. Everyone had wanted Big E to win. Big E just deserved it, so I'm not taking this away from him. 2022 is a bit of a funky year for the men's side of things because the match had Riddle, Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, Omos, Sheamus, Sami Zayn, and Madcap Moss. However, last second before the match starts, the WWE adds Theory, and Theory goes on to win and goes on to be arguably one of the most infamous Money in the Bank winners because he would go and cash in on the United States Championship and fail his cash in. This was just, look, this was borderline character assassination of Austin Theory. He's still recovering from this. I don't think he was a bad choice. I feel like he did embody what Money in the Bank is all about, but the WWE did everything in their power to make sure he wasn't seen as the right choice. Look, when I look at this field and when I look at the timing of where things were, I look at Sami Zayn, and we are in the middle of the honorary Oos run here. I don't know how we could do this, but think about the hilarious hijinks, the drama that we could have if the Bloodline has, of course, the undisputed champion, but also Sami Zayn in the same group with the briefcase. I feel like you could have had some fun there, and I feel like it could have been a missed opportunity. But Theory, again, the idea is not bad. It's the execution was fucking garbage. The women's side of things had the man Becky Lynch, Alexa Bliss, Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez. We had Asuka, Shotzi, and Lacey Evans. And I don't think that this is a bad choice. They went with Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan won. And again, frustratingly, as they've done numerous times with the women's Money in the Bank briefcase, cashed in on the same day. Again, that's my only gripe, but I liked her as the winner. And it did what the Money in the Bank briefcase is supposed to do, which is to elevate someone to main event caliber status and help keep them there. And that's where she is today. All right, folks, let's wrap this up. 2023 had Zelina Vega, Bayley, Io Sky, Trish Stratus, Zoe Stark, and Becky Lynch. WWE went with Io Sky. It is the right choice. She was the perfect winner. She had a great cash in at SummerSlam, and it catapulted her to the main event scene, and she stayed there. So the Money in the Bank briefcase did exactly what it was intended to do. The men's, this is where we can have a big debate. The men had a star-studded cast where I think you could pick three people really here that could be good winners. You had Damian Priest, Butch, you had Santos Escobar, you have Ricochet, Logan Paul, Shinsuke Nakamura, as well as LA Knight. I feel like you could make a case here for Ricochet. You could have made a case here for Santos Escobar, Logan Paul, Damian Priest, and LA Knight. The WWE ended up going ultimately with Damian Priest as their Mr. Money in the Bank. And look, this ended up turning out good. All right. The way that the WWE executed this was genuinely perfect. But his reign as Mr. Money in the Bank, let's not forget, it was full of buffoonery. A lot of people did not like Damian Priest's reign as Mr. Money in the Bank. Again, I feel like the WWE ultimately executed this perfectly. However, look, think about how they executed it, okay? Think about the exact same way that it happened at WrestleMania 40. Drew McIntyre wins the World Heavyweight Championship from Seth Rollins. He clowns on CM Punk. CM Punk attacks him. But instead of the Judgment Day music, bro, imagine the motherfucking pop for LA Knight. Just do it exactly like you did it for Damian Priest, but now just do it for LA Knight. It would have been thunderous. It would have been better. It would have been better. I'm sorry, Damian. It would have been better. I'm going to go with LA Knight. We wanted LA Knight to win back then, and seeing how well it was executed with Damian Priest tells me that that same execution would have been better with LA Knight. I'm going with LA Knight. Yeah. All right, folks. Thank you so much for watching that video. You let me know what you feel I got wrong, what you would have changed, but that's it. I'm done. Get out of here.